Hey, and welcome back to the Talos Principle. We have one last puzzle in Area C4. What a fitting one, and this is the oubliette. Okay, interesting. We have all the puzzle mechanics here combined. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. I would like to figure out what I need to do. Okay, we have two... I have an idea what I can do with those. Okay, we have two buttons I have to press at some point, because we do have like the recorder here. We do have the platform to get carried around on. This one? Huh? Huh? What's the issue? Why can't I just do that? Why? I expected more of a puzzle. Was there someone here who solved this for me? You're broken? Is my game broken or is this actually intended? Also, I am kind of missing a star piece, so maybe this is important for the star piece. Because otherwise, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with myself. How can I just solve the puzzle like that? Maybe this was actually just a joke puzzle, basically, where like there are tons of complex mechanics that you just didn't need. But there is a star over there. Okay, so at least there's something. But we need a red piece. Or like a red laser. Is there a red laser that I can connect to from here somewhere? Also? Haha, text. We can write something on a wall. Let's be friends with those guys. Don't worry, if you're anything like me, you just need to take your time and the solution will present themselves. Exactly. How am I expected to solve these problems when my existence is so limited? No. It feels as if I've been struggling with these problems for days. Did you take us along? Not really. I would not write that. I am too arrogant to do that. Trying to solve its puzzle, but we must remember to no matter how far any of us progress, we remain equal. Nah. I'm clearly the smartest. We're talking about smarts here, okay? Not about any sort of rights or like morality. We're talking about like being the best at puzzling, okay? That's true. Use an X. Always use an X. Truly. We are at version 105B. Interesting. So I kind of got stuck there for a second. Alright. I guess that's where we at. If there is a red laser, then we would have to connect from over here. Let's try this for now. We do have some pieces in the armory. I just need to bring like one of the laser pieces like to the front, because otherwise it's going to be hard to see. I don't know if this is actually like a genuine issue here, but I would like to pick you up. Put you over here. That seems to be a decent position to actually see something. Maybe it's not though. We will see. And then the connector is going to connect you and you. That should be fine. You know, I might be wrong about that. Maybe I don't even need it, but I do see some red, so you know, can't hurt to be prepared. Okay, gonna remove you. Because we need... No, wait, we also need the blue one. No, wait, we don't need the blue one. The issue, though, being that we still need... Oh, wait, we have the recording device. We do have more connectors. Can I see you from here, though? Okay, the issue is that I can't really see a lot. Like, I can get the red laser to here. Then I could make a copy of said laser, but I couldn't get it over here. So I don't get you though. You really don't want to do this. Also, we can climb out of there. Maybe I should have just tried to get up there first. Let's do that, right? Let's start recording. Put a pause point here. And then get over here. I've actually learned something from like one of the recordings. I did one of the puzzles wrong. But I did actually pay attention to what I need to do then. Because if I... Wait, can I even... Wait a second, can I... Okay, I want to say, like, I was kind of surprised that I could put the block there, but I guess I can't jump that far. Let's see if this is high enough. It might not be high enough now that I think about it. Yeah, Oh, wait. I know what I have to do. I know what I have to do. We need to start with the block over here. I'm always like, I don't know what it is. Sometimes I just get really confused by seeing the red. The red always feels like this. This means that it's blocked in certain shades. My mind just goes, why can't I place it here? But I can just place it. This is like just a normal color. In any case, let's start the recording, and I'm still gonna go over here. I'm going to bring the block over in a second, and I can just stand on top of here. This is like the idea. Let's do the playback. I need the cube to actually climb. Okay, wait, I don't actually need that. I still can, bring it. Can't hurt. And then we can get up here and go through here, but why? You're just broke. Like, I don't know. Is this supposed to be broken? This is like the confusing thing. Is this my game currently glitching out? Like, I didn't want to reload because, I'm already through the puzzle basically. But like, I could see myself. No, wait, even then, like, I couldn't bring the block with me. So why? Why is this? This is such a confusing thing to me. Huh. And like, I can go around here, right? Like, I could probably put like a block up there if I open this with like one of the connectors. But like, we do still have this connector, and this was like kind of what I was thinking of. I can technically connect to you and then continue, but I do need another color. And like, I could definitely connect the blue one here. Now the question is if I... Okay, let's open you. If I place the block here, you're probably still only... Yeah, you're only going to open like the one in the back. So this is not related to the solution, I wanna say. I don't know, where would I get red though? Is there like a connector up there somewhere that I can use to get some red lasers inside of here? There has to be something, right? Let's look around, right? Like, maybe there's like something I can connect to. Normally we get like a pop-up if I see something. Because where else would we get that? Big hms. Like, I mean, I can... Maybe I am overthinking this. Maybe I am. Maybe we don't need a red laser. I just had an idea. Okay, we have you. We have you. I'm gonna need you in a second for an idea. So let's pause the playback. Let's pick you up. I'm gonna put stuff on you, mainly myself, and I'm gonna run around. And maybe this is far enough away. Maybe from here, like, we should be quite high up when I'm standing on top of there, and should definitely be able to jump over. I say definitely. Might not be the truth, but we will never know unless I try. I'm gonna bring the block for now. Let's see how far I can make it. Okay, I can definitely go through here. I can probably make that jump. Huh. And this opens the door. Okay, so I was right about this, and now I just need to make another copy. That I don't even need to make a copy. I can just put like one of those there. Okay, so like the red laser was a red herring. That is good to know. And we get a star. I guess we're done with this area then. I think there were only 2 stars that they talked about, right? And it didn't even take too long. And I'm not really sure what I want to do with my time, because like normally I like to... Maybe the sub has something to say. Also, there's so much more paint. What's up with all the paint? I would like to write where I've already written. Can I not? Okay, let's write on the other side. I guess the solutions are going to present themselves. You know, I would definitely say that. Exactly. And we do have an eye, so maybe the serpent has something to say, so we have something to do with this episode. But I guess let's get talking. Hey, Mr. Serpent. There you are. You kept me waiting. I finally put my finger on what it was that was bothering me. It's as if the answers you're providing aren't your ideas at all, as if you're latent, prescribed, prescripted, and you're just going through the motions. Does that strike a chord at all? Well, I mean, going through the motions is definitely something that people sometimes do. But I would say that the answers that I am giving aren't necessarily my own, right? Like, these come from a accumulation of like all of humanity, or at least the part that I've read about, right? I feel like there are probably people smarter than me who have had even smarter thoughts, right? It doesn't change that like some of my ideas are probably my own. I don't actually know, there are probably a lot of things that I kind of came up with myself that I didn't actually hear about somewhere else first. But, But I would also agree that they're prescribed, because I cannot choose the right answers. There's a limit to what I can choose. Of course, you've only seen a fraction of the data I've archived over the generations. That's also true. Still, ask yourself this. Why is it that everyone's so darn sure that 2 + 2 makes 4, yet they can't agree on what they are, what they're doing, or why? This is actually something really fascinating in my opinion. Because math, especially pure math, is maybe the only, I guess, area of science where we are sure about things. And we're not even sure about like everything in itself, but basically because it is a construct that we have defined, basically, that does describe real things. But like, for example, the definition, and there's always the joke about like, hey, you know that you have like a math test and there's only one question and it's proof that 1 + 1 = 2, for example, right? We have axioms, right? Like axioms as like the idea there's, I guess, rules that are so fundamental that you cannot remove them, right? Like, basically, you just have to accept them for everything to work, and like everything else results from those axioms. We don't really have that for everything else in the universe, right? Like everything kind of uses the math because we've kind of figured out that it's really good at describing stuff, right? Like we talked about like how we figured out how like the planets move, and how we figured out wasn't Pluto, wasn't Neptune, I forgot which one we discovered using like the laws of gravity, and then we had like the whole history about, I think it was Vulcan, which was like the other supposed planet in our system. And then we kind of figured out that our understanding of the physical processes was like somewhat wrong, or at least not complete, which is why this planet doesn't actually exist, and it could be explained just from the massive gravity well that's the sun, right? So like gravity kind of breaks apart at certain sizes of math, basically, and then that's kind of how we figured out that, or at least our current understanding and slash theory is that mass actually bends space-time, as opposed to like just attracting each other, and that's kind of figured out. But like the math behind it is sound. It's just like our understanding of like where and how to apply it might not always be correct, and we have to make like a lot of assumptions. Yes, in theoretical math everything is possible, but this is also why we are assuming spherical chaos and stuff, right? But yeah. Anyway, I would agree that this is a lot easier to say that 2 + 2 makes 4, because we've kind of defined it in a way, or like we could at least prove it from our given axioms. Like if we have the axioms that 1 + 1 = 2, then from that on forth we can kind of combine everything starting at that point, which we know is the truth, because this is like the definition of our system of math. If that does not hold up, then our complete concept of math would be wrong. Right, but this is kind of where we are basing it off, and this is like another tangent, because we also have like the field of logic, for example, which is also relatively sound. But in both of those cases, we kind of have one paradox, and that is that especially the field of logic can't prove itself wrong. Basically, the idea is like we define an area, right? Like math, for example, it's like, you know, let's imagine it's like a sphere, the sphere of math that exists. We can use math to prove everything that's inside of it, right? With like other mathematical formulas. But we cannot check whether the whole of it is true or not. And same with logic, for example, because technically logic is also very, very closely related to math. But yeah, I don't want to go into like big tangents here, but yeah, we should probably talk about that at some point. So, the answers. Those problems are more complex than mathematics. Mathematics are always as complex as we make them to be. Mathematics has more objective truth to it. That I somewhat agree with. Okay, maybe not quite. So, what I do agree with is that our standing of math is a bit more objective than like every other field in the world. We are setting arbitrary lines constantly, which is also like a big issue that we are having with like the text that we are constantly working with in this game, right? Like, for example, we talked about the arc like a few episodes ago. And like while I was watching this, there was like one big point that I didn't actually acknowledge, even though it's like really important. I kind of acknowledge it at the end, but I don't think it's fully. And then it's like, okay, let's imagine you have the arc. And I said like, okay, yeah, we would pick up everyone who we find like on the streets to join us on the arc to save them, right? Like if assuming that we have the resources, we would save everyone. But we wouldn't save everyone, right? Like I had like this weird implication that I'm talking about like every human, for example. Right, like everyone I see very saving. But here, for example, we also had like the text about like the pets, for example. Okay. There's like this one poster, I don't know what it was, it might have been like a PETA poster or something like that, about like, where do you draw the line between like, you have in the beginning like dogs and cats and like rabbits and stuff, at some point you go over like horses and then cows and stuff, like where do you draw the line between like food and pet, for example. And this line that we have made is somewhat arbitrary. It kind of just comes from like domestication that we have done. It's very, I guess, culturally formed. It's at least how I have heard it, right? Like, for example, we in Europe for the most part, I would at least assume, don't think about eating cats. Why is that? Well, I've heard the answer. There are like some multiple answers, but like one of the answers would probably be taste, right? Like there are just some animals that taste better than others, and it's oftentimes that carnivores tend to not be as tasty as herbivores, to my understanding, right? Like this is like a general rule. I don't know how accurate that is. Okay, that's like one thing, but there's also the other thing, that is the domestication. Like we have used cats for such a long time to deal with rodents, for example, that you know, we're like dealing with our crops and stuff. Like they basically helped us out. Same with like dogs, for example, right? Like we domesticated them from wolves and like then we bred them to be the way we want them. They have been companions to us for so long. They've been helping us, right? Like they have worked with us and for us, you could even say. So it is a lot easier to see them as part of the family, right? Like with pets, than food. On the other hand, something like, I guess cows and pigs and all that, they were explicitly bred to be eaten. And this happened like so long ago. And this is also why these days, if you look at that, this line is going to be probably skewed towards having only like, again, like dogs and cats, for example, or like maybe rabbits and stuff, as pets, while all the rest is going to be like I guess they're for food for the most part, or like any other, I guess, use in that sense, right? Can be leather, can be milk, eggs, and we kind of just accept it. Okay, this is a very weird tangent, and this is like something I've always considered making a video about, because it's like, have you ever thought about propaganda? And I'm not talking about like explicitly political stuff. I'm talking about like things that we teach our children as true, to the point that they don't even question it. Okay, and this is like a very, very weird thing, maybe, because I'm talking about a children's song that I have learned when I was like in elementary school. And I'm not gonna sing the whole song, but like the song basically is about being a chicken. It's a very simple one. It's basically, I'm gonna try to translate it. It's like, I wish I were a hen. There wasn't a lot to do. I would lay an egg every day, and on Sundays I may lay a second one as well. Something like that. It's very rough. I'm not gonna make like a perfect translation here that actually rhymes. But that's like the whole text. Very simple. And I've been thinking about that because somewhat later in my school life, I guess, there was like... Okay, let's skip that story time. I'm gonna talk about that story time another time, because it's actually also about like the chicken and meat industry. But that's not important for like this text here. So, this is a song that I had learned in elementary school, and I have never really questioned it. I mean, why would I, right? This is just like a fact. A chicken lays eggs, right? This is just like a normal truth of nature, I guess. And they just lay so many. Basically every day they lay an egg. Oh, it's so normal. Why would it be any other way? But then you look at biology and like how reproductive cycles tend to work, right? Like eggs are not food, like inherently, right? They just end up food for us, but technically they aren't. And this is like something you don't really think about if you are, it's like so ingrained into you, right? Like why would it be any other way? I guess chickens are just special. They just lay eggs every day. But obviously this isn't natural. Like, I don't actually know like how massive the impact of humans has been on that, but I bet that humans definitely bred chickens in a way and like, I guess force responses that they lay more eggs in general, which also leads to chickens, you know, suffering constantly through that life. I know that there are like some farms where they basically take in the old chickens that have laid so many eggs that they can't continue anymore, basically. Right, like, I'm not gonna talk about like a lot about the meat industry. We do know that it's terrible. Whether it's enough to stop eating meat or not, that's, you know, a choice I feel like everyone has to make for themselves. But yeah, it's like this weird thing, and I'm calling it like Lucy propaganda. And there are like tons of facts that I have learned in school that are just wrong, straight up wrong. And a lot of the time I just figure that out because I'm talking about some random fact with like friends, especially like internationally speaking, right? Like I have the great privilege of knowing some people from all around the world. And it's always really fun, and then you bring it up like as a fun fact, and they go like, "Oh, I didn't know that," and you're like, and you know, at this point in time, right? Like I've been to university, I'm able to look at research papers and understand them properly, for the most part, right? Like I'm not gonna say that I'm an expert at it, right? Like there are probably people who are, I guess, more academically inclined to properly sit through those texts and properly understand them to a point that I couldn't. Even in subjects that they are not as acquainted as I would be. You know, let's ignore that fact. But like, I often check proper research papers, or like at least, right, like if it's something really simple to check, I at least check Wikipedia or something like that, right? Like, but this is something I would never have a reason to check those facts that I have learned in school. If it wasn't for me, like just bringing up like fun facts with like friends. Which is just like, I guess, a weird quirk of mine that I do that, but I feel like this is really important, because if you don't really figure out that bias. Anyway, I feel like I've ranted way too much about that, right? Like talking about chickens and stuff. But yeah, like I would say, like what we learn is so shaped by our culture and like our education. There are so many things that you don't really question when they come from the beginning. Like with math, the advantages, especially if you do like if you go to a university with something with a math focus. I don't know why the cam is broken again. I feel like I figured out how to fix it though. So there are like so many things that are culturally impacted, I'm gonna call it, like where the culture is like so important to your understanding, and you are never going to fix that understanding unless there are, I guess, situations where your biases are confronted. And because of the cam thing, I don't actually remember what I said before the cam died. But yeah, like, and oh yeah, I was talking about mathematics. The advantage of mathematics is like you learn in university how to prove everything. Not everything necessarily, but like the concept of proving if something is correct in math. And you can, like when you start learning math, for example, in school, you oftentimes just kind of have to accept everything. And then later on you properly learn, I guess, the methods that the mathematicians in the past have used to prove that without any doubt, certain things are true in the field of math. You cannot really do that with, like, for example, where a species ends and where it starts, for example, because there are like so many variables that, and this is the important thing, you do not know. That is the biggest issue about it. If we knew all variables, I feel like there would be an objective truth. But it is basically unknowable for us to have it is basically impossible for us to get all of these variables. At least like to our current understanding. Maybe there would be like some omniscient god-like entity. I'm not gonna say it's necessarily just a god, but like something so omniscient, like it looks at you and knows every single atom and everything, I guess every single piece that makes you you, and could look at that and could exactly tell you, like, for example, your next action. That reminds me about like another thing, but I don't have time for tangents. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to put that at the end. But like the idea of understanding everything, there might be an objective truth. But first of all, we don't know every single part, and second of all, I don't think the objective truth is oftentimes that necessary. It's like, or like actually useful. That's probably a better way to put it. There's like examples with like definitions, especially where we are drawing arbitrary lines. Like, for example, when is something a chair and when does it become a sofa? They're very similar. There's probably like some sort of point where like there's this switch between those two. But there is not really a strict line of like definitions, and I don't think it's really that useful, because linguistics, or like language itself, changes constantly, and we are trying to find something that is useful and preferably also not harmful for others to figure out. Right, like for example, let's talk sofa versus a chair. You could have like a very wide chair and like a very short sofa, and I would probably argue that one of the important things about it is not actually the width necessarily that you have, like, of the sitting area, but like whether the intent is that there's one person sitting on there or two, for example. And I feel like this would probably be more important in that question than anything else, right? Like if I said, hey, take a seat on the sofa, right? Like people should be able to figure that one out, even though by definition something might not be, or like by strict definition might not be a sofa. I don't know, just as an example. So I do believe that there is an objective truth to reality, and it's just that it is oftentimes not useful, and more importantly, cannot really be figured out by a human. We can measure some stuff, and we can measure parts of the reality and kind of try to combine it, but oftentimes language especially is really hard to use. Like if you've ever seen like mathematical notation, like that is very accurate, is probably a way to put it. Like if I see a mathematical definition, it is going to be true no matter which language you're looking at. Right, like somebody who doesn't speak German or English would still be able to understand that. And that without any cultural differences. That's probably a way I would put it. Because, for example, as a German myself, right, like I have had so many issues when I was talking with like the people I know like internationally, just because the way I communicate, like culturally speaking, is different. It is, first of all, a lot more direct than people would generally expect me to be, which also oftentimes, for example, gets considered as rude. And this is like something you definitely learn, like if you are taking like a high-level English class in Germany, that this is like a common, I guess, misconception that many have about Germans, where our directness is seen as rude. And the way, for example, we debate is completely backwards from like the English way. Stuff like that. This is, again, stuff that you tend to learn on like higher level classes. And there's like such a cultural bias in your communication that you cannot accurately communicate between languages, for example. Not 100%. There's always going to be nuance that is lost. And this is just between like different languages, but I would even argue that it's within your own language. We're talking about like dialects, but even maybe you have like expressions that don't really exist or make that much sense outside of your family, for example, or things that you find funny because you get like a joke because you understand like 20 bazillion references on the other side, like of your culture, I guess, from like other people who just don't get it. Right, like, and to you're currently making like a reference, and to someone else you just made up some nonsense, for example, right? I feel like this communication, like language itself, is such a barrier to objective truth that is rather fascinating. Anyway, perhaps mathematics is real while those problems are imaginary. That's an interesting way to formulate that. So, is mathematics real? I mean, it definitely describes real things, and we have definitely defined everything in there. The question is if it's real. That's like another question. Are those problems imaginary? I don't think those problems are imaginary, but because then you would have to kind of argue that all problems are somewhat imaginary. I would argue, you know, in my imagination, where a lot of problems only exist because we do set those boundaries, for example. But we kind of talked about like personhood a lot of the time here. And we also mentioned briefly about like where the line between like pets and food is basically. But I would actually go even further when we're talking about like lines. Currently, there's always like the question, okay, like, would you bring like animals with you on the ark, for example? I wouldn't say like this is like a forefront question, but I feel like it kind of goes that direction because we also talk about like how gorillas exist and they are relatively smart and like somewhat related to humans. Why do we draw the lines like between those two, for example? But it obviously also goes very much further, because if we still assume that the latest universal common ancestor, was it Luca? We also mentioned them very briefly in the beginning, where like basically all life kind of started as like the same life form. We're talking about like, I don't actually know how many cell organism, let's say single cell, I don't know if that's actually true, but a very basic organism, and like from there on basically all life has developed. Which also means that if we are drawing lines with like trying to include animals in the same category as humans, for example, then the question is, why don't we do the same for plants, for example, or fungus and all of that stuff, because they technically also are related to our ancestor, assuming that again the Luca theory is true. But now the question is, what answer can I give? Because we said already that there are pre-scripted answers that I can give, because it's the only thing that I can give. So are these problems more complex than mathematics? Again, like mathematics has like kind of the issue, like math can be very complicated, but it's exactly as complicated as we make it to be. Okay, maybe not exactly as complicated, but we can always make it more complex. That's like the whole thing. We can always add more parameters. If I had to choose one of those three answers, and I do have to, my gut is telling me I don't think I would choose the first one. Maybe the second one. I feel like the second one... nah, I'm gonna take the third one. Math is real, we are not. Precisely. Pose questions like, what should I do with myself, and what is this world really like? Enough, and you start to assume they have answers. That's actually very important, but we kind of talked about this in like meaning of life already. But what if that assumption turns out to be false? What if you're just a bunch of information processors? In that case, any attempt to answer the questions will be flawed. Garbage in, garbage out. I would so far agree. I mean, we are definitely information process, right? Like we are some sort of, I guess, biological machine. We had that talk before that processes information, like the culture, the world around us, and adapts. But what we learn is, if it's false, again, we talked about like propaganda earlier today, then yeah, definitely. Perhaps the flaw is in your reasoning instead. You're right, I made some dangerous presumptions. I do believe that I have made some dangerous presumptions. Maybe not dangerous, but definitely presumptions. Perhaps a flaw is in your reasoning instead. I feel like the most perfect reasoning does not work if the input is flawed. That's definitely part of it, right? Like, you can only, I guess, process what you are given. You cannot infer the truth from lies, basically. Okay, technically you can. In like very limited settings you can. But it's like, it's if we go back to binary, right? Like, if we say everything's a potato or not, yeah, okay. If I say this here is a potato, you could maybe figure out that it's not a potato. But could you, if you've never seen a phone, figure out that this is a phone? You can figure out that it's not a potato, assuming that you know what a potato is. Whatever reason you have that to argue that it's not a potato, that this is a lie, you can probably not figure out the truth without like better input. We know it's like something else, but yeah. I don't know if the reasoning... I mean, this is also kind of accusatory, right? Like, I'm understanding it as accusatory because it doesn't say perhaps the flaw is in my reasoning, but it says in your reasoning. So I'm talking to the serpent. So maybe the serpent is false when it comes to that. But I would say in this point, we feel like we seemingly agree with each other, and that a lot of these questions probably don't have answers. And that objective reality we cannot really reach because we, I guess, cannot see enough, or like perceive enough is probably a better way to put it, not just see. Which is, for example, why we in science use like so many measuring devices to help us out, because they tend to be more objective in reading specific values or like take specific measurements. Like, think a thermometer alone. Like, you tend to not feel, or let's put it another way. We tend to, for example, feel changes in temperature, but we cannot feel temperature. We tend to feel cold, for example, if we are radiating a lot of heat and are able to do that. And we also feel warm if we are not able to radiate enough heat because, like, around us it's, for example, warm. But, for example, this is vastly impacted by our environment. For example, imagine having water that's like at 5 degrees Celsius, right? It's like just above freezing somewhere. Or like the air at 5 degrees Celsius. Like, I can sit around in like 5-degree air for quite some time. If I hold my hand in that cold water, it's going to hurt quite a lot. Like, comparatively. And I'm not saying that I can sit outside for like days at a time with like 5-degree air, but I can at least, you know, stay there for a lot longer than I could stay in cold water. For example, just because, like, even though like both of those temperatures are the same, water tends to absorb more heat and more easily, especially because if you're also thinking about like the amount of molecules that can interact with you, water tends to have like more molecules to interact with you than air at normal pressures. Anyway, so yeah, I would say the reasoning here is fine though. I made some dangerous presumptions. I feel like I have definitely done so. It's always hard to see if I'm currently making them, but like overall I feel like I definitely have done so. And this is something I have sometimes talked about like after the text, and where I realized that I was actually wrong about something, or like not necessarily wrong, but like there were things I didn't think about, right? Like, example, again, the arc scenario where I thought like, oh yeah, like we're talking about like humans, but like what this leaves the question open of like, what is a human still, right? Like something we have not really answered, or like a person. And I set arbitrary lines of like what I would be picking up and what not, and I just kind of assumed that everyone would agree with like that line, right? Like the whole with me saying, for example, that I would just pick up everyone, but like, what is everyone, right? So yeah, I would actually say the serpent is right on this one. I am so pleased that you recognize that. I don't like that the serpent is pleased though. None of the answers make sense. That much is clear. One explanation could be unreliable data input. The other one is that there's a flaw in your logic. Perhaps we are just machines endlessly trying to calculate the final digit in pi. I mean, here's the thing. If you think logically about it, if you just guessed the large digit of pi, you have like a 10% chance of being correct. Yeah, math joke. But seriously. Yeah, it could both be true. Like, I completely agree. It could be unreliable data input. That I 100% know that our data input is flawed. I cannot make an argument about our logic though. And this is kind of what I mentioned before with like the whole idea that logic, like the way we are thinking about logic, right? Like we're talking about like statements and different operations between logics, generally like binary operations, where we have like true and false statements, for example. That whole field can prove so much stuff. The issue though is that it cannot prove itself. We cannot figure out if our system itself is true. Similar to like math. This is kind of what I talked about with like the bubble. In both cases, we can prove everything inside of the bubble, but not the bubble itself. So we cannot see whether there's a flaw in our logic. It could be there, but it's not provable. At least not with our systems that we currently have. We can check whether our data is unreliable though, and we are quite sure that it is. So anyway, you can't use reasoning to conclude that the reasoning itself is flawed. It does seem there's much that is beyond our understanding. Yeah, I would definitely say the same, the first one though, because I feel like this is very important. And your reasoning to conclude that reasoning itself is flawed. Fine, but we can still use it to conclude everything else is flawed, can't we? There's actually something, I guess it's like kind of obvious if you think about it a little bit, but like, yeah, we can prove that, like we have our system of logic. We can prove that it's like, we can basically prove everything inside of that. But assuming that the system is flawed and it wasn't actually correct, then every single assumption that we've made using that system does not apply anymore. So we cannot prove that everything else is flawed or like not flawed at that point, which makes it kind of hard to work with. Skepticism and self-interest are only part of the picture. You're right, self-interest is all we have. Wait, did I miss something? You're right, self-interest is all we have. The rest is fairy tales. Wait, why am I going for those answers currently? I feel like I missed a message somewhere. But we can still conclude, use it to conclude everything else is flawed. I would say no. Again, like, assume we had like a system of logic and that concludes that everything is flawed, right? Or like everything is wrong. And then we figure out that the system itself was wrong. Then we'd have to retest everything. And we would never be able to check whether the system, or like this thing itself, or like the system that we use to prove everything wrong is wrong itself or true itself. We would need another system to do that. And that kind of breaks it. I would say we need some sort of measurement in the beginning, or like some sort of system to work with. And skepticism is great, right? Like we kind of talked about this very early on, I feel like, where we talked about like how skepticism or like doubt isn't, I guess, the answer. You can't just doubt everything. You can question everything, but if you question something, then you need to figure out how to prove it's right or wrong, because otherwise you are not really better than anyone who just believes everything at face value. But I would say, yeah, self-interest and skepticism are only part of the picture. Oh, that's a glitch. You've seen how easily your view of the world is manipulated, yet you trust those thoughts that run through your mind. You'll feel differently once you come back from the tower. You must be getting close by now. So we do now know that the serpent seems to have a lot more control over the world than just the PC. That is important. But yeah, I still think that skepticism and self-interest are only part of the picture, because skepticism itself does not mean that you're trying to figure out a way. Here's the thing, just because our system is flawed, we still need to experiment around to find like better systems, right? Like currently we have a system that can't prove itself to be true. But what if we find one? But we could only do that by experimenting some more. I don't know if it's possible, but, you know, some healthy skepticism probably helps us to advance there, but only if we actually, I guess, define our parameters and define, I guess, our goals properly when it comes to that stuff. But in any case, the serpent is right. We are getting close to the tower. And while I still don't know their name, and I will never figure it out, serpent is just kind of too cool. Let's be honest, that's a cool name. And it's probably also one of the reasons why I respect them, because, like, imagine meeting someone who's called the Serpent. I mean, come on. It just kind of has to be, you know, probably the coolest person around, clearly. No, but seriously. We're getting close. This was area 4? 5? So there are like 2 or 3 more areas, and then we have the tower. And I am not sure what to make of the tower yet. And also there's still like the whole star areas. I don't know how I'm going to handle those, but we will figure that one out in the next episode. I'm also going to go through here just in case something happens. But I don't think there will be something. And this was area 4. Well, in any case, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. I'll be seeing you next time. Till then, have a good one, and bye-bye.